everyone, this is Sabra from Hoof Falls and Footfalls. Sorry for the delay there. I'm going to be going live now to talk about holds and turns and how they can impact our students. So I am going live through Zoom right now, so I do apologize if there are any glitches in what's going on, but I wanted to go live through Zoom so I could go ahead and share some photos. What we're going to be looking at are 5 different photos that were graciously sent over by a fellow instructor, and these photos are pretty awesome because they are showing different scenarios that our students in adaptive riding or therapeutic riding often encounter. So we'll be looking at just kind of a general walking photo, a tight turn photo, a photo showing an ankle hold, and also photos showing a thigh hold, and how those different situations impact our students and their position on the horse. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at those. And we're going to be specifically looking at the rider position and how their position is impacted by the different external factors that are going on in the photo. So again, thank you to the instructor that donated these photos so we could use them as a learning experience. If you have any photos that you want to send over, you can feel free to blur out logos or faces, but I love looking at real life photos in action, or I guess not in action, but real life photos that are showing real life events so that we can use them as a learning experience. So this is our first photo that we are going to be looking at. This is a photo showing the rider just walking on a horse. I'm going to get my little draw tool out here. So as you can see, this rider right here is riding without stirrups. So the stirrups are crossed in front of the saddle. So they are walking, feet are hanging nice and loose. There's a little bit of upward flexion here in the toe as well. So this rider is trying to hold themselves on the horse. They don't just have noodle legs. So we've got those kind of factors that are in play without adding in volunteers. And this was actually done at a clinic several years ago. I'm not sure who did it or where, but props to them for talking about rider alignment and position and how our volunteers and how we turn and handle our horses impacts our students. So this sounds like it was an awesome clinic to attend. And I'm very fortunate to be analyzing these afterwards. So thank you for sending them over. So right here we can see down the center of our rider's spine, we have the yellow tape, and then we have the different dots here that mark out shoulder position here, the center of the head, and then we have the top of the hip, and the bottom of the hips, the bottom of the pelvis here as well. So if we look at our rider here, just sitting and walking on the horse, she's got fairly good even position right now. You can see though that her pelvis is tilted slightly down and to the right. So the top of her right hip is tilted forward a little bit. And that is because this horse, in the motion that it's in, that horse's right front leg is moving forward and that horse's right front shoulder is dropping down. So the rider's right pelvis is following. Just a quick little side note there on what we're seeing in this snapshot of motion, since we'll be throwing in external factors of our volunteers here in a moment. So it's really good to look at riders walking on a horse without external factors if possible. This is why as adaptive or as therapeutic riding instructors, it's so important for us to have a very good foundation of rider posture and alignment and position of able-bodied riders on horses so that we have a strong foundation of our baseline of where we're trying to get our students to go. So this is an able-bodied rider on a horse in a learning environment for a clinic that's looking at the impact of sidewalkers and their holds on our students. All right, so now that we have our baseline here of the student or the rider that's on the horse, let's go ahead and throw in some external factors. And those of you guys that are joining in live, if you want to drop a comment of what you're seeing, go ahead and feel free to do so. Right now it's going live on Facebook, so you're welcome to drop comments there. All right, so First thing we have here, this is a rider trying to stay on the horse through a sharp turn. So this is a sharp turn, fast turn to, does anyone want to guess what direction they're turning? If you guessed they were turning to the left, you are correct. So that horse is turning sharply to the left, and you can see that that rider is pulled to the outside and they're kind of left behind that motion. And this rider is doing a very good job of trying to counterbalance and keep themselves over the back of the horse by dropping that inside shoulder and trying to stay balanced over more of that left hip bone, even though their right side of their hip is dropping down. And because they're trying to stay counterbalanced and not fall off the outside of this turn here, we're seeing that inside C shape here and them trying to counterbalance and hold themselves over top of the horse. Now, again, remember, this is a learning environment, a clinic environment. This is an able-bodied rider. If this were one of our students that maybe did not have the greatest balance or the greatest vestibular system, and things are kind of out of whack there, and they are not able to quickly adapt and change where their body is at in space and in their environment, that rider might have just plopped off to the right side of the horse because that horse was almost quite literally turned out from underneath of them. So when we're doing our turns, we need to be very aware of how fast we're turning the horse and how sharply we're turning that horse and the impact it can have on our students. Another thing, if the student is lower tone and maybe is not able to engage their muscles very quickly, or they maybe just don't have that muscle strength built yet, they may not be able to have that muscle strength to adapt and hold and counterbalance themselves on top of that horse. And that can be creating problems. Again, our horse here, looking at our equine coworker, if we're consistently doing sharp, tight turns to the left and that rider is pressing heavily onto one side of that horse's back more often than the other, or they're leaning on one side or the other, we're going to create a sore back, probably more on one side of our horse in continued situations like this. Now, say for example, we did this turn, notice our error, oh my gosh, that was way too fast, way too sharp. As an instructor, I would be immediately checking after that turn or coaching my rider through that turn of how they can regain that balance and regain that centeredness back to a more appropriate alignment where their spine and their shoulders and their pelvis are in a more neutral and centered position. So mistakes happen, this happens. So just be aware of when those mistakes happen, what do we need to do afterwards to help our students go back to a more appropriate position. All right, so we have our fast and sharp turn here. I'm gonna go ahead and exit out of that one. And let's take a look now at a heel hold or an ankle hold. So again, getting my drawing tool out. We have here the volunteer that is doing a ankle hold or a heel hold here on the right, and then we have a second volunteer who's doing one here on the left. So we're looking at this from behind, so we can't quite see where that rider's leg is falling at from the side, but I'm guessing that based off of how this rider is sitting on the horse and where their leg is following, even from behind, this volunteer right here is pulling that rider's leg back out from behind them, and it is behind that rider's hip. So remember, when our riders are riding, we should be trying to the best of our ability to have our riders ride in an ear, shoulder, hip, heel alignment. So we should be able to draw a vertical line through the ear, shoulder, hip, heel, and have them maintain alignment. This heel right here has been pulled way out behind that student's hip right here. So that's causing problems. The leg here on the left side of the horse looks like it might be slightly behind the hip, but not too bad, but it is a little bit hard to tell from looking behind. But taking a look again at this right side, kind of the bigger offender of the two, you can notice that as this right leg is pulled back behind the rider, the pelvis of that rider completely shifts. And how it shifts is that by the right leg getting pulled backwards, we're now causing the right side of the hip to get pulled back towards the tail of the horse, which is then forcing more pressure onto the left side of that rider's hip. And they're trying to counterbalance by sitting a little heavier on the left side. That left shoulder's tipped forward, and that right shoulder is actually coming back towards the tail to try to counterbalance. So everything's kind of gotten knocked out of alignment because that volunteer's hand has taken that rider's heel back and out from behind them. Now, if this were a student who really did need a heel hold for whatever reason, maybe they have some stim behaviors where they tap their heels a lot on the horse, and the volunteers are trying to maybe soften a little bit of that tapping on the horse so that the horse doesn't have to interpret that information, or that so the horse doesn't take it and speed up. If that student really does need that hold, the heel holds could be beneficial, but you've got to watch out for situations like this, because we might be trying to solve one problem of the rider tapping the horse on the side, or tapping the horse's sides with their heels, but then we might be creating another problem of the heel holds not being done evenly or correctly, and that rider is getting shifted off balance, and then we're creating more issues. And if you kind of take a look in front of the rider here and look at our horse, that horse is saying, hey man, something's not right. You can see that that horse is braced through their body and braced through their back. They're feeling that that rider's off out of alignment. They're feeling that it's not, something is not right. And so that horse, the body language and the ear, you can see even from the snapshot that that horse is aware of the situation. And again, we're going to be creating imbalance on our horse and possible soreness if this is a continued problem or continued situation in a lesson. So what can we do to fix these situations? One, preparing not only your rider before you are putting on heel holds or before you're turning a corner, because it looks like they're about getting ready to turn a corner going to the right here. But not only preparing that student, like I was getting distracted by the turn, preparing the student for that turn and that heel hold and what that's going to do to them, but also preparing your volunteers. So if you're about to turn a corner to the right, you need to prepare this inside volunteer here that they're going to need to slow their pace down without pulling back on the rider's leg or pulling the leg out in front of them because they keep walking quickly. My guess is that this volunteer probably realized they were turning to the right, and so they suddenly slowed down and took that rider's leg back with them. That's just a guess because that's what I've seen in my own lessons, and I've had this mistake happen where I've had to correct it and I didn't give my volunteers enough heads up of that situation. On the outside here, the volunteer that's on the left side of the horse, if they're having to travel around the outside of that turn, they are going to have to speed up and take larger steps without having that rider's leg get pulled back behind them. And I think one of the reasons why this rider is also shifted to the left side of the horse here, one, not only is the right leg being taken out from behind them, but two, I think this volunteer got a little left behind here, and they're pulling down a little bit on that rider's leg as they're trying to catch up around the corner. Again, this is just a snapshot of what we're seeing, but looking at what's going on in the rider's body and also having experienced this firsthand and having made these mistakes in my classes as a sidewalker or as an instructor managing these situations, these are just kind of educated guesses as of to the root of the situation here. So give your rider a heads up of what you want from them around those turns or when the volunteers are going to be doing heel holds on them, and also give a heads up to your volunteers of what they need to do. And if you're seeing one volunteer apply a little bit too much pressure, say on the left side, or one volunteer is pulling that leg back on the right side, give them a heads up of what they need to fix. How do they fix that problem? Why is it important that they fix it? Something that you can do is give them a visual marker to kind of anchor that leg to. So if this volunteer on the right is consistently pulling that right leg back, give them a visual marker of, okay, I want you to keep the rider's toe at the back edge of the girth. That might give them a visual anchor to hold that leg to, so that they hopefully don't pull that leg back, because they may not even be realizing that they're doing that. Possibly having the volunteer maybe stand a little closer on the left side here might help them feel like they don't have to push down as much on the leg. Maybe they're reaching out too much and they're off balance and pushing down on that rider. So be thinking about what's going wrong or what's going right. Praise the rider, praise the volunteers for what's going right. If something is going wrong, try to problem solve through it and give your volunteers the tools they need to fix that problem and resolve that in the future. All right, let's take a look at another photo. All right, so here we're moving to thigh holds. So usually rule of thumb of thigh holds is that you want to do it as a team. And what that means is that you are doing it in a team of two. So you have one volunteer on either side, just like we're seeing here. So we have a volunteer on the right, we have a volunteer on the left. Another rule of thumb with the thigh holds is that those thigh holds should be at the same level. And so this photo here is a very good example of what happens when those thigh holds are not at the same level. So you can see here that the volunteer on the right side, their arm is much higher than the volunteer that is on the left. This could be that they just reached up and they grabbed and they weren't looking at where they were grabbing or what their sidewalker partner was doing. It could also be a height thing. A little difficult to tell here because the volunteers have been cropped out, but I'm guessing that this volunteer on the right is probably 3 inches or so taller than the volunteer on the left. So that's something that we would have to adjust for, is if you have a volunteer that's taller on one side or shorter on one side, how are you going to have to coach them through where they're putting that thigh hold on the student? So with the thigh hold, you can see here that the student is drifting down and is getting pulled down towards this lower placed thigh hold. And not only is it pulling the leg down, but they are also then trying to counterbalance and stay on this horse by having this C shape here and dropping the right shoulder and kind of tightening the right side of their core here to try to stay on. Again, this is an able-bodied rider. If this was a student that did not have body awareness or enough muscle strength or enough of a sense of where they're at on the horse and how to counterbalance that pull, you might pull this person off of a horse if the thigh hold is done incorrectly. And these volunteers may not even be aware of it. It's very difficult to see what you're doing to that student when you are right there next to them and you can just see them out of your peripheral vision. So the instructors have a very important role to play when we're managing our team of volunteers. We've got to be looking at these things. So where are our volunteers holding onto our students if they're doing a thigh hold? Are those thigh holds level? Are they applying the same amount of pressure? And if they are not even and applying the same amount of pressure, how are we going to fix that problem? If our volunteers were holding at the same level, so say this volunteer and this volunteer were both holding equally, but we're still seeing this problem of the rider drifting down to the left, then I would know that it's not just the low thigh hold that's causing the problem. If they're level, that's telling me that this volunteer over here is pushing down harder. If the level of the hold is the same. So we've got to be looking at that as well. So thigh holds, they matter. We can't just pop a thigh hold on and assume that it's going to be the safest thing. There is a technique and a correct way to do the thigh holds, and it is something that we have to constantly be managing as instructors and making sure that we're that outside eyes on it, because again, those volunteers, they might think that they're providing a good level of support, it's even, but it's hard to tell that when you are directly hands-on with that student. All right, so let me know if you're joining in live, if you have seen any of these situations before that we've talked about, either the sharp turn that knocked the rider off balance to the outside, the heel hold or the ankle hold where that rider's leg was pulled back, or the uneven thigh holds where it's causing that rider to become off balance. And these uneven thigh holds, again, not only are they uneven on our student and causing issues, our horse is feeling that. And if this horse has to do uneven thigh holds for a 30-minute class and maybe another class after that, talk about burnout in our equine coworkers. No wonder they're grumpy, no wonder they get sore backs, no wonder they don't like their jobs, and they maybe get snippy when they see volunteers or those sidewalkers starting to come around. So be aware of that. Again, we're working with living, breathing animals that have come alongside of us to serve our students, and we need to be aware of the things that we're doing and the impact on our horses. All right, one more photo to look at here. So we have here again the uneven holds, but it's at a little bit different angle. And we can see here, I'm not quite sure why this rider's arm is dropped down here, but this is telling me that this hold is a little bit too high, and that the rider really doesn't have anywhere good to put this arm. I'm sure they were directed to just let their arms hang down. However, if this were an actual class where that student were needing to hold the reins or do something here on the front or the pommel of the saddle, they would have a difficult time doing it because that rider's arm and their hand, or I'm sorry, the volunteer's arm and hand are kind of in the way. So this volunteer, their thigh hold is actually up too high and it's kind of blocking the hip. It needs to be down a little bit lower. Whereas the volunteer on the left, their hold was a little bit too low and too close to that knee joint area. So as this rider is going around, it looks like a right turn here, you can see again that they're trying very hard to counterbalance and try to almost get away from this low, hard hold here on the left. And so we can see again that left hip is getting pulled down by the volunteer, and that rider is having to counterbalance. We're not just seeing a C shape here, but they're actually leaning forward and into the right front hip and the right shoulder to try to prevent themselves from getting pulled off of that horse. And you can also see here, if you're looking at the head, their head is up and tense, trying to hold their head and their neck up as their upper body is leaning forward. So we've got tension in the head and the neck, and their head is kind of tilted back into the left, and their right shoulder is tilted forward, and their right hip is tilted forward, and their left hip is getting pushed and pulled backwards. So we've got this whole big domino effect on our rider's position that could be resolved and be made better if we addressed first. I would say primary thing to fix would be this low hard hold here on the left, and then shifting down this hold on the right just a tad. And then that would help even out and balance out our rider. If this were a continuing problem, and if I were an instructor and I were giving feedback to my volunteers and I see this problem happening again and again, where this volunteer in the blue is constantly holding high and this volunteer is constantly holding low, I would have to assess and see whether or not this volunteer pairing right here is a good match. This volunteer might be too short for this horse, or rather, not that it's the volunteer's problem, this horse might be too tall for this volunteer to set that volunteer up for success if they need to do a thigh hold to support that student. So we've got to think of the big picture too, and all right, are volunteers paired well with the student, and are they paired well with the horse to set that volunteer up for success in whatever job you are asking them to do. If these two volunteers only needed to walk by the student and occasionally provide maybe hand over hand assistance for reining, or maybe they're just there as a visual support for that student that doesn't maybe want to be by themselves, or they're there to help to redirect attention, then this pairing might be okay. But if this is a student who is on this horse in this tack and equipment and needs a thigh hold, this volunteer on the left may not be a great fit, even though they might get along really, really well with that student. Physically, it may not be a good match. So those are pieces that we have to take into consideration as well, as instructors and as we're working with our students. All right, so that kind of wraps up these 5 photos that I wanted to look at. I just had these sent over to me by a fellow instructor, and thank you to the person who sent them over. I'm so glad we had a chance to take a look at these and kind of break them down. Photos and videos are awesome to take and review them. And even though they may not be a good photo that we would post on social media to advertise our programs, taking these photos that capture oops moments are wonderful learning experiences, especially for instructors in training, or maybe we're stuck as an instructor and we're not seeing what's going wrong in the moment in our lesson. Take photos, take videos, and go analyze them after the fact to see if you can see what the root cause is, how you can fix it, how you can problem solve through it, and move forward and learn from the situation, because we're all going to make mistakes. That's okay. This happens. This still happens in classes I teach, and it's just something that you have to adjust with as you go and learn from the situation and give the tools to your volunteers or those that are supporting the student so that they can grow and develop and have a better understanding of how they can best support the students, and how they can best fulfill their jobs as a volunteer. And that helps with volunteer retention too, because then they know they're doing a great job. They can see the outcome, and they have a successful lesson. So let me know what you thought of this live video going over photos. I have a few other photos that we will review at a later date. So make sure you jump on the live stream. Again, if you have any photos you want to share that we can use as a learning situation, I'm looking for those. So photos or videos, I'm willing to share them anonymously, because I know sometimes sharing those photos that we can learn from can be a little scary and hard to analyze, or not hard to analyze. They can be a little scary to share because it opens us up to feedback and critiques, but that's where the learning happens. I share photos and videos all the time in the Intuitive Instructor Club of my lessons and where things go wrong, and I share them on YouTube and on these live instructor chats. And so if you guys have any other photos or videos you want to share, send them on over, saber.p@hooffallsandfootfalls.com. Again, those can be completely anonymous, but taking a look at these hard situations like this is how we learn and grow as instructors. So I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening or day, or whenever you're watching this, whether it was live or on replay. And I hope you guys tune back in for the next instructor chat. And I will see you guys around.